All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee and our Health and Human Services Committee. This is a joint session. We have two special appropriations before us today. The first one is regarding a non-competitive contract award status for identity, and I will turn it over. Is that the first one? Oh, it's okay. I think that's the first one I have in the packet, and I believe Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez joined us for that one as well. And I see other people joined us for that as well.
I don't know why they're here. Yeah.
So I'll just, as you're pulling it up, Michelle, I'll say this is the work sessions on a proposed special appropriation for our FY24 operating budget of our DHHS for the opioid abatement funds in the amount of about $3 million, and a Section G amendment to the FY24 designation of entities for non-competitive contract award status for identity. We got this transmittal from the county executive on January 5th. We held a public hearing. And are we ready to go? Okay, I will turn it back over to you to describe it and call up who you need.
Okay, I believe we have Dr. Santiago and Dr. Burgess. So the council has received the special appropriation that will allocate $3,088,862 to the Department of Health and Human Services to support strategic initiatives focused on treating and preventing substance use disorders. As all of the council members are aware, increasing opioid and fentanyl use has reached crisis levels in the county, particularly among young people, and it's been a focus of council members as well as council committees in recent years. These funds are the initial allocation of $5 million from the opioid settlement flowing through the state, and it's estimated that the county will receive approximately $43.3 million over an 18-year distribution period. The executive has developed and will summarize the strategies for investing these funds, including treatment, harm reduction, prevention, provider, and community engagement and management. And they'll provide a short summary of these strategies shortly. The Joint Committee will also consider the proposed Section G non-designation of entities for non-competitive contract award amendment to add a new contract with Identity for $280,000 to provide targeted emergency substance use intervention services. Identity will mobilize staff to engage with youth 21 and under across the county, particularly areas that have been highly impacted by the fentanyl crisis. This special appropriation is supported by state opioid abatement funds, and as a result will have no effect on the general fund reserves for fiscal year 24. The hiring of merit staff may require ongoing support in future fiscal years. However, the council staff notes that the opioid abatement funding will continue in future fiscal years. So at this point, it's not clear whether there will, or to what extent there will be county general funds needed to support some of these ongoing initiatives. The racial equity impact assessment finds that the special appropriation is likely to advance racial equity and social justice in Montgomery County and shrink racial disparities in opioid overdoses affecting youth. Council staff recommends approval of the special appropriation as submitted by the county executive. The staffing and services to be supported are crucially needed to address the opioid epidemic, with particular focus on youth in the county. The Joint Committee should request that the executive and staff collect disaggregated demographic data to the extent feasible to better target resources, develop responses that address the needs of at-risk populations, and measure progress in addressing disproportionalities. And so at this point, the executive staff can provide a short description of what strategies they are intending to implement.
All right. Well, Dr. Bridges, Dr. Santiago, it's great to see you here again today, and look forward to hearing the work that you're planning on doing.
Thank you, Council Chairs and Council Presidents and Vice President Stewart, for allowing us to present what we feel is great work that's proposed in using federal and state dollars. But I would be remiss if I not thank the council. The Department of Health and Human Services is listening, and we've heard repeatedly the need for partnerships, public and private partnerships, to look at individuals in the community. We have partners here today, great partners in Identity and other partners who support the work within Health and Human Services. Now, the reality of it is we can't do this work alone. We need folks who understand the community, who understand the need to not only strengthen families, but the communities, educate families, parents, youth, regarding the use of substance use and how it could turn into a substance use disorder. And so we're putting together a plan as part of our work. The governor just reinforced that this afternoon regarding partnerships and the need to strengthen partnerships not only at the local level but at the state level. And so you will see some of this in the work, in the proposal that we presented today. So I will stop there. I will turn it over to Dr. Santiago and Mr. Stevenson, who will actually walk through the packet to articulate how we plan to delineate the funds.
So I want to thank also Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Albornoz for convening this work session. Very, very important one at this stage, especially amongst our youth here in the county. And as indicated in the packet by Ms. Yao, she did a great job with it. The scope of the opioid abatement funds in the special appropriation is comprehensive. It will be used for activities in treatment, in harm reduction, prevention, community engagement, and management of the funds. The funds for a pilot emergency response that will be used to target youth using opioids and fentanyl in the Aspen Hill, Glenmont, and Wheaton corridor is also included. So I might as well ask Diego Uriburu to join us here, because I'd like him to describe some aspects of that work. So the purpose is to engage the youth and their families and connect them to treatment, but also to many other services, from food security. Some of these kids are hungry, to housing. Some are even homeless, to recreation, to schooling, to keep them in school, and more. So this will be done through Identity. So we do have Ben Stevenson, who can speak a little more in depth about the comprehensiveness of the opioid abatement funds use, and then I'll have Diego make some remarks about his work with Identity. So then.
Good afternoon, everyone. So just to speak specifically to the work we're doing around prevention and harm reduction, I'll just kind of start with the harm reduction strategies and what they will look like. So currently, of course, we're doing a lot of Narcan training and distribution in the community. The plan is to kind of beef up those efforts with this funding in pursuit of trying to have Narcan in at least all county buildings, which we currently have been able to do kind of in an organic way, but do it in a more standardized way so that everyone is aware of where and how to access Narcan. Also seeking to have Narcan in all places that serve alcohol, so looking to partner with the bars, restaurants, hotels, and things like that to ensure that they have Narcan and that their staff is trained as well. Also ensuring that we have Narcan vending machines placed strategically in the county where people can actually access Narcan, but also access additional harm reduction supplies, which could include first aid kits, fentanyl test strips, xylazine test strips, and things like that. And then just making sure we are expanding access in a equitable way, making sure that everyone has access to Narcan, whether it's through trying to educate and bring awareness, but also beef up those partnerships that we've talked about. We've also talked about training our first responders and our prescribers in the county, providing education around proper prescribing methods around prescribing opioids, but also engaging with individuals who are dealing with substance use disorder in the beginning, but also training around being, compassion fatigue, as well as we've also had discussions about the inception of buprenorphine when you engage with someone who is experienced an overdose. And then also looking at trying to beef up infrastructure around harm reduction. Currently, we don't have a manager dedicated solely to harm reduction to help us to expand and grow the program the way it needs to be. And so this fund will provide us the opportunity to actually do so. And then also expand, into other places, like having strategic partnerships with homeless shelters and other programs in high-risk neighborhoods and things like that to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the community. And then from a prevention space, we're seeking, of course, to expand community awareness campaigns, just because a major piece of this is bringing awareness and making sure everyone is aware. Of course, we know that marketing costs a lot of money, and so this will help us to kind of solidify some of that in that regard. Of course, the fact that these funds are over the course of some years, and then also translating that information into multiple languages because we're such a diverse community. And then the expansion of our ASAP program, which is our Adolescent Substance Use Prevention Program. So currently we're utilizing that program to deliver Botman life skills within MCPS schools. So this will help us to expand that partnership and be able to meet the needs of more schools than the few that we've been able to do so as far as increasing staff. And then also increasing our peer-to-peer message with our Youth Ambassadors program. So currently we have about 38 youth ambassadors. We've been able to train about 8 of them into being Narcan trainers, so they're able to train their peers on how to identify the signs and symptoms of use, as well as deliver the Narcan training. So trying to expand that program to be accessible in every school, and even in the private schools in the county is important. I think this funding will also help us to build up that infrastructure as well, because just like Dr. Bridges alluded to, the important piece of us to get through this issue or get through this challenge is partnerships. And this money will help us to establish and solidify some of those partnerships with also the partnership we're establishing with Identity. So thank you for your time.
And just to add, Councilmember Stewart, part of the discussion that Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez had about understanding and knowing HHS. And so we've worked very diligently as part of this opioid abatement funding process, but across HHS to increase our publication, our notification, our public relations capability. And so this is yet another opportunity to strengthen that outreach in the community so folks know that these programs exist, that we have these resources, and not for those individuals who are principally at risk, but for the entire community, family, and including partnerships with our recreation and other agency partners, both public, governmental, and private partnerships. So I just wanted to add that.
Diego, did you want to say a few words?
Happy to. Thank you and good afternoon, wonderful members of the council. So I'll provide a brief description of the program. It has a few different components. The first one is a harm reduction component that has subcomponents. The first one is outreach and engagement. The first thing that we want to do is to establish trust with these young people and with their families. As we establish trust, we want to understand where they are in terms of the stages of change, meaning how dependent they are on substances. So if someone is in pre-contemplation and doesn't believe they have a problem, they're a lot more difficult to move them towards treatment than if someone is in contemplation, meaning that they identify they have a problem but they're not willing to make the change. Then they move to preparation, where they know they have to do something, they're willing but they're not there yet. Then to action, maintenance, and relapse, because that's very real. Depending on the level of dependency, we'll work with HHS and many other partners to get them the appropriate treatment. the families, our experience is that many of these families need quite a bit of support during treatment. We will also, part of the program that we are developing has a case care coordination component, meaning we have to work with case managers at the treatment facility, with MCPS because the child needs to leave school, etc. We will identity will be the point person in terms of the care coordination of all these services. And last but not least, we want to make sure that the family, the school community, they go back to the school community, and the community in general is prepared when these young people come home. Unfortunately, we have seen a tremendous amount of efforts going to treatment, and then when they came home back, they ended up in the same environment that they used to be in, and that led to relapse. So we are also going to try to work very closely with the family, with the school, with friends, etc., in order to ensure that they have the best supports they need in order to succeed after treatment. The other key component of the program is the family support and case management. We want to make sure that the families are not left alone at any point, that while we're talking about their children as the main objective, and that we support them as they support their children, we also want to make sure that they don't get evicted in the process, that whatever needs they might have are addressed by our staff. I'll reiterate that this is a partnership. We hope to work with the young people, with the families, with county staff, particularly in that area, with other partners in HHS, with the business community in that particular area that have raised lots of concerns. We have met with a few of them already. So all that in order to work specifically with the young people, the families, but also look at the community as a whole. We will also work in partnership with other youth-serving organizations or providers, not just county funded, but some private businesses that have reached out to us in order to be partners in this endeavor. So in a nutshell, I just also want to say two important things. My colleague Nora is here. She will be leading the program. And we are fortunate to have, we're in the process of hiring a wonderful individual to manage the program who is in recovery himself, whose sister died of an overdose, and for whom this is very, very close to his heart. And as he told me, his mother told him, they want to make sure that her daughter and his sister's passing is not in vain, and they're really willing to give it their all in order to make this work out. So I think we have a great team. We're also hiring a young person that used to live in the streets, so he knows what it is to do that, or to live that way. And we have a long relationship with HHS, with Dr. Santiago, with the Street Outreach Network, with Luisa Cardona, with the police with whom we will work also, in order to provide the best services possible to these young people and their families. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Any other information you'd like to provide? No?
If you're good, we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think my colleagues have a few questions. Ms. Yao, thank you for the staff packet and everything. Before I turn it over to colleagues, I just had two quick questions. One, thank you for this work. I know it is something that the council has been talking about, HHS, and particularly my colleague, council member Natalie Fanny Gonzalez has. So thank you. Just one question, just because this is a joint session with Government Operations and Fiscal Policy. And so, Ms. Yao, I know you mentioned that this is coming from the opioid abatement funding, and that we should expect that funding for the next few years. But at some point, that funding will probably go away, correct? So,
Correct. I mean, that's my understanding. It sounds like there will be quite a bit of funding still coming to the county, and
Yeah.
at least in the near future.
And I can speak to that.
Yeah.
So The Attorney General of the state of Maryland, I think their settlements now are over $400 million, maybe approaching $500 million. So each county is receiving funding, and as Ms. Yao pointed out, about 43.8 million or something like that has been allocated to Montgomery County over 18 years. So you can expect these funds to sustain programs like the ones we've discussed today for a period of 18 years.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Santiago. That's exactly the, I wanted to know if we were talking 2-3 years, but it looks like we're talking closer to 18 years. I appreciate that. Does the chair of HHS want to say anything?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chair Stewart. It's great to see all of you. And, you know, this has been an area of focus now for almost 2 years since the crisis really hit levels none of us had ever quite seen before, with deaths that were just heartbreaking beyond belief. All of us on this dais have been focused on this issue. I also want to echo the acknowledgement of the work that Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez has had. I had the opportunity to attend one of her recent youth town halls, and the recommendations in this report track nicely with what we heard in those community sessions, and I think will help meet this moment. And I just want to express my deepest appreciation to Identity and Diego. We are very fortunate to have an organization in our midst that has the ability to be able to hit the ground running, not create something from scratch, but build off of the existing infrastructure, the trust, and the relationships that Identity has been working now for several decades to help develop in the county. And so I know that this will be a very valuable investment. I did just have 2 questions, Diego. So, and you alluded to them just now, which is it's music to my ears that you've identified the team to help carry this forward, which I think will be very important. But what else will you need to be able to leverage? And I know this crosses over into policy challenges at the state level, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of space here to talk about, you can only control what you can control. And there's a lot you can't. Are there things that we should be advocating for, maybe even during this legislative session in Annapolis, that we should be aware of? Gotta hit your microphone.
First, Dr. Santiago promised to give me anything I needed.
You'll know him. He's the one who just fainted.
Yeah, that's right.
The biggest concern that we have is that if the treatment centers where we hope to refer young people to become overwhelmed by the demand and there are no longer beds, then what happens? The county doesn't have them. The ones that we're thinking about are in DC. So I think that the state needs to be thinking about creating more availability of those type of resources. As I said the last time I was here, the risk factors that are impacting young people and leading some of them, to these behaviors that then lead to being heavily dependent on opioids. Those have not changed. So I'm concerned that we build trust, we promise treatment, and suddenly we don't have it. What do we do as a county? And what other options do we have? Because it's not just us who are dealing with the challenge. There are lots of other jurisdictions, so we'll be fighting for the same beds. So I'm not an expert on treatment. I'm an expert on harm reduction and prevention, but that is something that I know enough of to be concerned about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have another question, but I'm going to put myself back in the queue because I have a feeling Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez is going to ask it, and if she doesn't, I'll get back in the queue.
Okay. Well, I have.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right. Just in terms of outreach, and Dr. Bridgers, you alluded to this. So what we've heard from some members of the community, particularly some advocates that have frankly taken it upon themselves and literally driven some of these kids to resources that they've been told are available to them, only to find out that the kids that they have driven to these resources are not eligible for some reason, or there's some challenge, or the resources that had been promised don't rise to the level of what the actual needs are. So how are we going to communicate and meet the community where they are, but also be realistic about expectations and what we can and sometimes can't do.
Again, I am not an expert. Dr. Santiago promised me. No, my understanding is that we will use county funding, so not county, but these same dollars to cover the costs of treatment for young people who cannot afford it or who don't have health insurance. That's my understanding, but I think that I will pass that question along to Dr. Santiago and Dr. Bridgers.
Yes, a significant amount of the funding in this special appropriation is going towards inpatient treatment. As Diego alluded, it does not exist in the state of Maryland for Medicaid reimbursable kids. However, it does exist in the private sector, but you have to pay about triple the amount. We were still successful to place a 13-year-old undocumented child this past fall at Sandstone Care for about 5 weeks. We were able to promise, because the kid was under Care for Kids, which is a reimbursable program under DHHS. So we were able to make those arrangements for that particular location. But the big one that we want to open is the Baltimore facility that currently was closed about 5 years ago because they were just not receiving enough kids to go into treatment. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that we're going to equip Diego and his team with connections to the treatment and many other resources. So we're promising to work very closely with Diego and his team so that they have easy access. We have been able to place 8 to 10 kids already here in Montgomery County that are using fentanyl, about 8 or 9 kids, but it's in the adult facility. And they have been 15, 16, 17 years old. Fortunately, we've worked closely with the state to make variances, exceptions, because this is an adult facility that many of you may have visited already at Avery Road, which is a great facility, but it's for adults. So they've done some exceptions, so we've been able to place. So we need to connect Diego, make sure that he goes and visits a place. How are these exceptions done? So if there's a child or a youth who's willing to go into treatment, we can already create that access, whether there or if it's a very young child that sends some care. So even though we don't have the Baltimore site yet, we have the ability to place some of these kids already. But we'll continue to work with Diego and help not just those treatment connections, but as Diego said, there are other needs that the kids have and the families. They need case management. They need to be connected to school, to attend school, supports for that, and a lot more that we've been discussing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So
Yield back.
let me add one more challenge. I think we are clear that we are running a pilot in this particular jurisdiction. As soon as people found out that we were doing this, I started getting calls from the courts, from DJS, and others who are dealing with similar issues or challenges with kids from other parts of the county. So I think we will be put in a position. I will send them to you. That was a joke, a bad one. But so I think it will be hard to keep the doors closed for too long because the need is real and parents are desperate. So how do we say no to a desperate parent? That would be a different type of challenge.
I appreciate that.
So Councilmember Alvin, I know everyone is weighing in now, so I'm going to join the party. I think part of that is to, as Diego and Dr. Santiago indicated, although the money is spent over time, we have to look at effective measures. And while there's harm reduction, there needs to be an evaluation of the process. There's also part of the process is a selection criteria. And Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez and I talked about that as well, because everybody wants to have the treatment, and we want to make it fair and equitable but we need to be realistic in that assessment, and that's part of the plan to whether or not it's implicit or explicitly stated in this packet. That's part of our planning as well, and working with Identity and other partners. That's a universal plan that we've begun to implement within the Department of Health and Human Services. Part of that is also technical assistance and training, health literacy. Are we empowering folks to understand what those services are and how beneficial they are, not only in the here and now, but long-termly? And we talk about systemic changes over time. And then the last piece is sustainability. 18 years will come if the funding comes, depending upon the leadership at the federal and the state level. We need to be able to have a sustainable plan to continue to demonstrate how important this program, these funds are being used. And so that's part of the work that we put into this packet.
Thank you. I
Great.
yield to you, Chair Stewart.
Thank you. I have Councilmember Katz, and then Sales, and then Councilmember Natalie Fanny Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Madam Vice President. First of all, I too want to thank Councilmember Natalie Fanny Gonzalez for her hard work on this, and all of yours. Candidly, I can think of no better organization. I'm saying this in front of you, Diego. I can think of no better organization to be a partner with us on this and many other topics than Identity. I don't say that lightly, because Montgomery County is literally blessed to have the nonprofits and the for-profits working in Montgomery County. But you, time and time again, have proven what a wonderful organization you are. And I go back to when I first met you with Teresa Wright in what was my store at that point, to bring you to Gaithersburg. And you, since the very beginning, have saved lives, literally and figuratively. So I believe that this is the right group and the right thing to try to do with this. Let me ask just two questions. Number one, does Avery Road accept Medicare? Do they? How does that work?
Yes,
They do.
that's their strength. Medicaid.
Medicaid, I mean, yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then, Mr. Stevenson, I think it was you that mentioned there's vending machines for Narcan. Is that what you said? What is that?
Yes, sir. So there's a movement across the country in regards of employing harm reduction vending machines. So those vending machines can house Narcan, where a person can actually go to a vending machine and just actually access Narcan or other harm reduction supplies just in case they may need it. And they've been placed in various places, where there's libraries, health facilities, and different places where people can just walk in and access, because they wanted to make it more accessible to individuals who might be in need of it, right? So I've already been contacted by a couple of members throughout the county that said, hey, we would like to host a Narcan vending machine in our location, whether it's from Tacoma Park to Rockville to up in Germantown. So just trying to make sure that it's accessible to as many people as possible is just important, and it's
Do they
going to
pay
be
for
effective.
it? How does that work?
So we actually have put funding within this opioid abatement fund to increase supply supporting Narcan, and that was one of the strategies we were looking to employ to ensure that, one, we have money to purchase the vending machines, but two, we also get our Narcan from the state, just like every other jurisdiction. So of course we don't have to incur any costs there, but then we also get fentanyl test strips and xylazine test strips from the state as well. So the cost is minimal. It's just making sure that we put a plan in place of oversight and making sure it's stocked and has all the supplies that it needs for individuals to access it.
Thank you. I look forward to voting for this. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mrs. Yao, for putting this packet together. And I applaud the county executive and my colleague for bringing this recommendation forth. I know these funds are so critical with the recent briefing we had from Dr. Davis a few weeks ago about this. And so regarding the $2 million slated for opening an inpatient treatment facility for youth, can you tell me what the what the timeline would be for that? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We're waiting for the state to send us an MOU where they promise to give us 2/3 of the funding to open the facility.
Okay.
So it could happen anytime. I'm grateful for our partnership with Dr. Davis, who's been the conduit to make that happen. Thank you, Dr. Davis. So hopefully soon.
Okay.
We were hoping that by today we would have received
Okay.
the MOU, and who knows, maybe it's tucked in an email, but we're getting close to that.
Okay. Do we have an intended location that we're?
Yes, Mountain Manor in Baltimore. That's where it's located.
Okay. Okay. So there's nothing that's going to be here in Montgomery County.
We do have the adult facility, as I mentioned.
Yeah,
And
but
I
nothing for
think we
youth.
can continue to do exceptions for youth there. But
Okay.
we also want to do a really good transportation program with the contract. We're actually driving the contract. We already have the contract in place. So as soon as the state comes on board, we're ready to go.
Only because I'm familiar with a school, an alternative school that's in, I believe it's in Frederick, and they help students who are transitioning out of treatment facilities and acclimating back into the school system so that they're not, missing out on school assignments. They're able to still get their full support, and so want to make sure that those wraparound supports are also available. And then, so if there's any information we can find out about those partnerships with the schools as the students are transitioning. Okay.
So we actually do have a program just like that in Montgomery County. It's called The Landing. It is housed at Shepherd Pratt in Gaithersburg. And there's also where the RAP program, the Recovery Academic Program is.
Okay.
So that program is similar or
Yeah.
exactly like the one in Frederick.
Okay.
To provide those wraparound services for kids who are either in treatment or recently removed from treatment
Yes,
to provide
yeah.
supports and services for their recovery.
Okay, and how many seats or spaces does that school have, the one that we?
That is a good question. I will find out that answer and I will get you that response.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then, Diego, always a pleasure. So glad that you are part of this effort as well. I won't even echo what my colleague, Mr. Katz, mentioned because I could sing your praises all day. I just wanted to ask about the appropriation once approved. Do you have anything immediately top of mind that you would do to reverse this trend? Anything that comes to mind of whether it's outreach to targeted populations? I grew up in the era of DARE, and so I don't think we have anything like that in our schools anymore. And so I'm just wondering how we're going to, meet the needs of the populations. And then as we've heard from some of our affinity groups who addressed this issue, the number of black men and women dying from overdoses from fentanyl and heroin is 4 to 6 times that of their white counterparts. And it's particularly concerning that both Maryland and D.C. continue to be hot spots for opioid overdoses. And so I know the racial equity impact assessment highlighted these statistics as well, and just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Sorry.
I want to
In
get
terms
you on
of
record.
the first thing that we're going to do immediately is start working with these young people who are already using in the 3 areas mentioned before. So we are ready to hit the road running. We will also work with the families, and then we're also working with all the partners. I think that we will start, the purchase order was on Tuesday, 2 days ago. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, we will start working with them and then try to move them from where they are to treatment if they need it. The other part of your question, this is more of an intervention program rather than a prevention. So we are working with young people who are already using.
Okay.
That's the charge that identity was given. What you're bringing to the floor is very true. There are, so as I said before, there are other jurisdictions with young people who are using, who have established a dependency.
Yeah.
And then they have the prevention part, which is knowledge, attitudes, and that should be county-wide, if you ask me. But it's different from the targets of this particular contract, who wants to focus on young people who are
Already
using.
impacted.
There's groups that have been already been identified. That's why I said we'll go speak with them immediately, because they have been identified.
Yeah.
They are. So it's a little different from what you're saying, but
Yes.
that is a need that I think everyone here knows exists
Definitely.
for all
Yes.
populations.
Yeah, so we're going to have to, revisit the prevention of this. Thank you. I'm done.
All right, Council President Friedson? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Stevenson, sorry.
So I'm also a product of DARE, which statistically showed that it was actually ineffective across the country, data-wise, as far as reducing substance use. But it did increase relationships with law enforcement. But like I was sharing earlier, we're looking to beef up and expand BOP and life skills in school, which is an evidence-based prevention curriculum that can be implemented from a prevention perspective. And just to share, it has been proven to decrease drug use, alcohol use, violence, in regards of reducing verbal and physical aggression, fighting, delinquency, in addition to reducing tobacco use. So if we can actually beef up that program and do it county-wide, then we could probably yield some very good results from that in regards of engaging with young people. And then there's even also a family component with it as well, because I think it's important to build up those protective factors within the family, like Diego and others alluded to. So I think from a prevention perspective, it has to be education, because historically scare tactics have not been effective either. So we have to. And then sometimes we lose credibility with young people when you try to scare them to not use the
I don't
substance.
recall DARE being a scare tactic when it wasn't like.
Well, it wasn't necessarily a scare tactic,
Yeah.
but
I
my
don't think the
remembrance
numbers-
is only the officer friendly.
Yeah.
Other than that, but just looking at the statistics nationally, it wasn't an effective program.
Yeah, and I don't think the numbers that we're seeing now with the opioid epidemic mirror what's happening now back then.
No, it's definitely a different time now, because
yes. And so whatever program you mentioned, I don't know where it's currently in existence at. If we can see some numbers on its performance,
Sure.
whether it's a pilot, I don't know what those numbers are. I haven't seen it. This is the first time I'm hearing about the program.
Okay.
So I'd love to hear more about that program and what we're doing, if it is working,
Sure.
to replicate it across MCPS, and what age we're actually starting that program out at.
Sure. Identity is actually implementing it as well. I work collaboratively with Carolyn Camacho, who had
I know
trained a
Carolyn
lot of her
very
staff to implement it within the wellness centers and other
good.
sites as well. So I could probably work with her and get some of that data
Yeah,
too.
I think,
Thank
you know,
you.
since you have the chair of HHS, this is why we do these joint
Yeah.
committee meetings, but it sounds like,
We need to have a
you know,
meeting about
look
this.
at the supplemental appropriations we have before us, but it sounds like there's a lot of great follow-up to do because of the amazing work that all of you have been doing on this, and have an opportunity to ask about all the different programming that is out there. I'm going to turn it over to Council President Friedson and then Councilmember Natalie Fenn-Gonzalez.
Appreciate that. I think I came right after DARE, but I did have the DARE T-shirts, the black T-shirt with the red and the white writing that were available. I was in the days of before prom. They used to put a wrecked car in the front of the high school, which was a scare tactic, and that was, I think, the second iteration of this is your brain on drugs. I don't think those worked. To be clear, I don't think there's any data to suggest, to your point, that it worked, but to my colleague's point, what we're doing now isn't working either. Broad-based, we are leaving way too many particularly of our young people, behind. And as someone who has lost multiple people close to me from the opioid epidemic, and I know I'm not alone in this room and not alone on this dais. I don't know that there's anybody here who hasn't been directly impacted, and mostly by people who are young. Usually, if it doesn't grab somebody when they're a teenager, it starts when they're a teenager, and it eventually catches up. And 20s and 30s, and it's hard to escape. Sometimes impossible to escape. And so we have to address it. I agree. This isn't a prevention tactic. This is an intervention tactic. We need to have all hands on deck at every aspect of this. But this is a crisis, and failing to act and doing everything that we possibly can is just not an option. Particularly as people are dying, particularly young people are dying as a result. So I appreciate the partnership here. I think government can't do this alone. There's just no doubt about that. We have tried without government. It doesn't work. We've tried only government. That hasn't worked. The only way it's going to work is by leveraging everything that we have at our disposal and ensuring that we are doing this as a community-based partnership. And that is the approach that I'm seeing here. So I appreciate that. I hope this works. I hope that this is just part of the effort. I just want to get back to the fiscal side of it. We've talked a lot about the human side of it, which is really important. But just to reiterate, these are not taxpayer dollars of Montgomery County taxpayers. These are settlement dollars. So we are using the money that we are getting as part of the national opioid settlement that has gone to the state and it's now going to the county. The almost $3.1 million in this particular part of it, and then there's a piece of that $280,000. Just correct me if I get any of this wrong. I just want to make sure that we kind of get back to that question. Is going to what we're the partnership that we're talking about here, although we're talking about all of it in general as well. And I think that's important too, that we are putting to use the settlement dollars to try to serve the community, to try to follow and abide by the dictate that we have by the state and the dictate that we have from the settlement itself, to use these in a way that actually does do the intervention and the type of ultimately prevention we hope that is needed. So could you just speak to the settlement aspect of it, if you could, of how that works? What is the broader part of that? Kind of zoom us out. We've zoomed in. If you could zoom us out for a second and just explain how this fits into the other strategies as part of the settlement over time and how this is going to work moving forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilmember Friedson, for that question. So as I mentioned before, there has been over $400 million that the Attorney General of the state has been able to settle with the pharmaceuticals. A little over 43 million are coming here to Montgomery County over 18 years. We are giving to you for approval the use of the first 3.1 million, as you mentioned, that incorporates the 280,000. What we expect right now, we're thinking that every year we will need to sustain programs ongoing programs at about $3 million. So we have received more than the $3 million already, but we have to budget them in a way that we ensure. We're not sure exactly how much the state is going to give us from one year to the other. So we've gotten a good chunk at the beginning, but we got to budget them appropriately so we can sustain some of the programs that we're proposing here with this appropriation over the next few years. So $3 million or so is about what we're projecting to sustain on an ongoing basis. It's possible that we may have more than that, and which I think we can then do creative approaches like emergency responses with a $280,000. But I know for a fact I'm keeping a list of maybe 8 to 10 projects that are not part of this appropriation that we already know that could be fundable as well. So we're keeping track.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that, so I'm glad you hit on that. So
Yeah.
what's the plan if we get 3 million exactly on the nose? We know what the plan is, right? Give or
Yes,
take.
we do. Yeah.
If we're under that, what is the strategy? Do we offset that with general funds? Do you come in with a special appropriation? And when do we know? At what, when do we know for the year? We have programs that you have set up. We have obligations that we are establishing.
Yeah.
We have, staff that we're hiring. When do we know from the state what the settlement number is going to be and what the timing is going to be, and what's the lag time that that you have as a department and that we have as a council to react to that?
Yeah. Those are good questions, and I would say I would defer to our budget team to answer. But right now, as I mentioned, we have received more than the $3 million. We're pretty good to go with the next 3 to 6 years. We have budgeted already, done some budgeting figures, and we should be okay. Right now, I'm more worried to get the funds out, get the projects going.
I agree with you. I'm going to support this today, just to be
Yeah.
very clear, but I think it's very
Yeah.
important that we fully understand what the process is going to be moving forward
Absolutely.
and have an idea of what is the flow of this, because there's two aspects of this from my perspective. Because these are the state opioid abatement funds that have already come in, that we've already settled on. The money hasn't come in, all of it yet. We've gotten the first tranche, essentially, which is a little over $3 million, $3.1 million almost, that has come in.
Yeah.
There are also other settlements
Sure.
that haven't occurred yet
That's
with
correct.
other, we believe entities that are responsible
Yeah.
for this crisis who are still in active litigation that ultimately we hope and expect, and I think the public demands and this crisis demands will result in more money. So the two questions are, what do we do if there's times where we fall short, and how do we fill that in? How much time do we have to react? The other is, how scalable is this, and how quickly can we move forward with additional funds should they come in? If the $3 million is more like $5 million, can we scale this up, and how are we going to focus on that? If you're not ready to answer that today, it's not going to change
I
my
have some
vote
comments.
on this, but I think we do need answers to that, and we do need to start working together to figure out exactly what the flow of this is going to look like, so that we can react and respond. To your point, if the number comes higher, how quickly do you have that menu of options of interventions and other creative programs that we can agree on together? We're going to fund, and we're going to deploy that funding as quickly as possible to address the crisis.
One example, let's say that we get more than what we had thought we were going to get. One of the most effective prevention activities is public messaging through media, but that can be very expensive. So we can easily, we could easily spend on public messaging, putting on buses, on TV, on radio.
It's not going to say this is your brain on drugs.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the old message. But
we're not gonna have Mick Ruff.
I want to hear from
That's an
Dr. Bridgers.
example.
The one thing that I would suggest is, starting now, after you get this approved and you get this program set up, we should agree collaboratively on prioritization of next steps, so that if we do have additional funding, the second that we become aware of it, you're already ready. You don't have to start then convincing us of the programs that you would like to do, and we have to spend 6 months figuring it out. We're ready, and you have a list of the things that you would have liked to do if you had $5 million instead of $3 million, and then we can just move forward. We can say, we already agreed on this list. Here's what's next on the list. Here's how much money we have. Let's get the money out the door as quickly as possible, so that we're ready to go.
Sure. So thank you, Council President Friesen, for those series of questions. But going back to your questions about fiscal impact. So the first thing that comes to mind as I listen to your questions and Dr. Santiago's response is that we have a plan. We have contingency operating plans where we begun to assess in the out years the cost. We've worked closely and continue to work closely with the Office of Management Budget and our budget analysts. Third, Dr. Davis and I have ongoing conversations with the Maryland Department of Health, the Department of Human Services, and those entities that may help influence some of those fiscal impacts. So we have a plan. I know we've had many discussions about off-ramps and on-ramps and how we can plan for that. So we need to look at how to scale up, how to scale down, those appropriations. But lastly, and which is at the cornerstone of this, is we need to look at the data. We need to look at the data and the impact that it has on various populations. Councilmember Sells talked about the impact that it has in the African American community, principally with African American males. Where those needs are they, will they impact our funding capability here? Do we need to request additional funds either through the council or advise county executive and the executive team on where we anticipate those increases and decreases? So those are some of the strategies that we're putting in place now. There is no cookie cutter concrete response or answer to the fiscal impact, but we want to use the money now. And we want to look at the money over the next 5 to 6 years. We need to evaluate the impact that this money, be it from either the feds or the state, how it's used in the community. We need to identify other partners, similar to identity, where we know we have that cultural capacity to look at using the funds. So those are some of the immediate fiscal strategies that we've had conversations with not only the executive team, but the Office of Management and Budget and the secretaries at the state level.
Appreciate that. I think as much as that plan could be worked on, collaborated on, communicated, decided upon in advance so that we're not trying to catch our tail, the better off all of us will be, the easier it will be to implement, the faster you'll be able to deploy this so that we actually can help those people who need it today, needed it yesterday, so that all of us who have been to too many funerals, have shown up in too many hospitals to address these crises when they reach the breaking point, sometimes the point that there is no return, that we can address it. So I appreciate that. I look forward to that. I appreciate the collaboration. Obviously, we have a great community partner here that's a proven partner with the department, and really look forward to being able to leverage that to the extent that we can. I'll yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for the very patient Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, who I know this issue, like many of us, care deeply about it, but this is an issue that you have been championing and working on, so I will turn to you now.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet, I promise. I'm just going to say thank you so much for listening and for all of us to be here at this moment. It has taken so much work to get here. Phone calls at the state level, with these guys, with other people, and I'm so pleased that we finally we can work together with Identity. I already have a whole bunch of meetings set up, especially with the school system, waiting for that one-on-one between you, me, and the schools. And I mean, to the point that principals have already identified the kids that need the help. That's how bad it is. And then I will just add what I said on Tuesday. This is one tool of the whole box. The preventives, making sure that we have programs to ensure that our kids are occupied, that they see their value, that parents know how to get help. That's key. And I'm hoping for the operating budget from the county executive, we can see more investment on those programs to avoid what's happening right now with this crisis. And this type of partnership with nonprofits, that's key. Something that you guys didn't mention, the faith community, especially within Latino community, is so important. And I already have those institutions ready for us to go meet them. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I look forward for your vote, because I don't get to vote here, but when it comes to the full council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales had another question.
Yes. So my mother was a social worker here. She used to work with outpatient addiction services. And I know that is no longer in operation. I don't know how long it's been out of operation, and you've been, I guess, using contractors for these services. So what have we been doing since outpatient addiction services was in existence?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Sales. We do have the specialty behavioral health program at East Goody, 1500, and they support the drug court program. They also provide buprenorphine medication-assisted treatment. Right now, we have a physician that is just tremendous. We're just grateful that he came. He has a specialty in substance use prevention and using medication-assisted treatment, where we have been expanding it even in the jail as well, starting to initiate, not just maintain, buprenorphine and the use of medication-assisted treatment. So we're very proud of that program. Want to continue to support it and continue to grow it. We got great partners. The work with judges and the drug court program is excellent. So it's one of our managers got honored last year with a Judge Roop award because of that work with.
So I know that they have this for the adults, but I know that the youth drug court was disbanded.
Oh, that's correct.
Yes,
you are correct.
I'm just wondering how our youth are getting connected with these services, or if this is going to be the new solution.
I'm not a legal person, but my understanding is that the laws in Maryland over the last several years have been more lenient towards prosecuting youth for offenses. So even if there was an attempt to bring back the youth court, there's very few tools. So that's why we're doing emergency responses like the one Diego is working on, because it's more using a carrot rather than a stick with the youth.
Okay.
That's where we need to be right now.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I yield.
Great. Well, thank you for that discussion, and I think it's setting up a future HHS conversation very well. So with that, I'll ask all those in favor of both committees to raise their hand to approve to move this forward to the full council. That is unanimous. Ms. Yao, for moving this forward. Thank you very much. We are thrilled with the work that you're doing and looking forward to moving this forward. So thank you for coming today. All right, and thank you to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez for joining us in her advocacy. All right, our next item is a special appropriation for the FY24 operating budget for the Department of Health and Human Services for the Youth Safety Initiative Coordinator. This is $96,000. The source of the funding is the General Fund Undesignated Reserves, and I think, am I turning this over, Ms. Yao, do you want to start? And then we have Dr. Bridges, and we're joined by Dr. Davis now.
Sure. Special appropriation 2445 for the Youth Safety Coordinator is in the amount, as Councilmember Stewart said, of $96,000. And there's a Section G designation of entities for non-competitive contract award for Umana Public Health Solutions, LLC. The executive has transmitted this appropriation request for the Youth Safety Initiative in response to the joint HHS Public Safety and Education and Culture Committee discussions around the county's ongoing response to youth safety concerns. The appropriation will support the Youth Safety Initiative by allocating funds to a contractor to help facilitate the coordination of a comprehensive public-private public health response to challenges affecting youth safety. Executive staff will provide a quick summary about the anticipated work plan and outcomes of the Youth Safety Initiative Coordinator. The recommended special appropriation is funded by general fund reserves, and as a result, the appropriation as recommended would result in an approximate 0.001% decrease in the fiscal year 24 year-end reserves that were projected as part of the December fiscal update. The transmittal letter indicates the appropriation is anticipated to be a one-time expense, and as such, it would not have a fiscal impact in future fiscal years. However, council staff does note that The executive staff anticipates that additional staffing may be needed to coordinate the youth safety initiative and other youth development services after the work under the contract has been completed. And basically the work of the consultant and the work group will help inform those ongoing needed investments. The racial equity impact assessment finds that the special appropriation has the potential to advance racial equity and social justice for youth in Montgomery County, particularly for youth identified as Black, Indigenous, people of color, disproportionately impacted by violence. With effective implementation, the Youth Safety Initiative could create more equitable outcomes in safety, health, and opportunity for young Black and Latinx residents who currently experience a disproportionate poverty, trauma, and criminal justice involvement due to systemic inequities. As a result, Council staff does recommend approval of the special appropriation as submitted by the county executive. There currently are a number of intersecting initiatives to serve young people, to prevent negative outcomes and promote positive youth development, but these efforts and services lack coordination and are not part of an overarching strategic plan designed to ensure that all the county youth have what they need to lead, to have healthy development.
Thank you. Dr. Bridges, Dr. Davis, would you like to expand on the program?
Sure. I will say a couple of remarks before I turn it over to Dr. Davis, since Dr. Stoddard couldn't join us this afternoon. On behalf of the county executive, this is yet another opportunity to leverage support and strengthen our public-private partnerships through this effort and the work that Dr. Davis is leading for the county, cross-county, cross-agency collaboration, but with the much-needed support through this funding initiative and special appropriation. It is an opportunity for the Department of Health and Human Services, again, to focus on those entities in the community and in the county who can help us in doing the work. And I honestly am glad that we didn't have discussions this afternoon about workforce development, because I have some comments for that as well. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Dr. Bridgers. So really, in brief, I was before the council in the fall, and we talked about the increasing risk of youth safety, violence, exposure to violence, victims of and perpetrators of, and how that actually coordinates with a lot of the substance use work that we've been doing. And this special appropriation is really to bring in some support to help with coordinating those efforts, really as we look beyond HHS and helping to coordinate a governmental effort. And we're thinking about really providing that public health approach to violence. We know that violence and exposure to violence is a social determinant of health. And so it makes sense for this to be led by the health department, but we need some help in being able to help coordinate really across the county. And so this contractor will help with development of meeting agendas, be liaisoning between Health and Human Services, the County Executive Office, other offices across county government, developing media posts, really being that coordinator. And I think the real benefit is helping us to do better analysis and evaluation of the programs that already exist, before we slap another Band-Aid program on, to really better understand what exists, how we can utilize what there is, and create that coordination across the county.
Great, thank you. I'll first turn it over to the Chair of Health and Human Services.
Thanks. So I can provide a lot of context here. First of all, I totally support this appropriation. I frankly don't think it goes far enough, but this is what's before us, and I think this is reasonable to move forward. But we had this position, we had several of these positions from 2008 to 2012. I was hired as the director of the Recreation Department because of the rise in gang violence in the county at the time. And my job was to initiate the Positive Youth Development Initiative, which we established with then Director of HHS, Duma Uluwalia, and then Chief of Police, Tom Manger. And that established the strategy, and Councilmember Katz was mayor of Gaithersburg at the time and participated in the task force along with some of our other municipal partners that created the blueprint for us to establish the Positive Youth Development Initiative in the form that it took in the Leggett administration. And what we did at the time was focus more on intervention and prevention rather than suppression, which had been the focus. Not understandably so, because of the level of crisis and the level of violence that we had seen. And things subsided. It worked. The coordination among government agencies, nonprofit organizations, our private sector, it's a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of meetings, a lot of work with MCPS, and it does take somebody who's in a position to be able to connect these dots formally, and I'm looking at Ms. Yao, because Ms. Yao was there at the time too, to really be effective. Otherwise, we're just spinning wheels. We're wasting people's times. And we don't have time to waste, given the circumstances that we've seen. When we have 12-year-olds involved in carjackings, something's got to give. And so I'm excited about the work that this contracted position will produce, but acknowledge that, and I know that we're in the process of developing an overall youth development updated strategic plan. The Education and Culture and HHS committees received a briefing on this, which was immensely helpful, and we're due for a follow-up. But similar to the previous conversation on opioid abuse, we've been focused on this issue like a laser from many different angles. But this one in particular just is close to me, personally and professionally. So I just had a couple of questions, but the coordination is important, but has the executive branch detailed other county agencies specifically and formally to be able to ensure that, or will this contracted position be given the clout necessary to be able to be a decision maker on the ground and have the full support of the executive and the CAO to bring people to the table?
Yeah, this position does have the full support of the county executive and the CAOs and ACAOs to really help be that coordinating force in bringing folks together. And as we look at developing, say why such a small amount? Because we want to be really intentional on what the larger amount is, and developing that vision and taking the time necessary and bringing the right folks to the table to be able to have that conversation and set the longer term strategic vision. And so part of the work of this consultant, working with myself, and some of the work that Chief Treadfans has already done and led with a consultant, is to really be able to bring the broader strategy, both short, medium, and long term forward. So expect that there will be a broader proposal based on the work that is done, and this is really just laying the foundation for that broader proposal.
And can you discuss the sort of, I know that's preliminary, but in general, the profile of the person that you have in mind to help coordinate these efforts? And I'm going to lead the witness here. It needs to be somebody that is already familiar with and already has relationships with the entities that are on the ground working in this space, because there's no time for a learning curve, as we know. So can you just talk briefly about the candidate, the ideal candidate that you think you want to bring on board to do this work?
So we do have a candidate that is named Umana Consulting, and Kelly Umana has been a champion in the community. She's someone who is well known through the community and has worked with Identity before, has worked with Cheer, has helped lead community health workers, and so has the benefit of being somebody who can hit the ground running in terms of already knowing who the players are. I have the benefit of having seen her work before and know that she is competent, organized, and knows how to get things done, knows how to run a meeting and make sure it's not just about running the meeting, it's about making sure the follow-ups and the things in between so that we can help to hold people accountable, and have seen that in her.
That's really great to hear. And obviously this is a regional issue, and Councilmember Stewart, representing the council on the Council of Governments, has been close to this and the coordination regionally. How will this work intersect with some of the cross-jurisdictional work that's happening now?
I mean, that's essential, right? We need to be pulling in our cities, Rockville, Tacoma Park, Gaithersburg, as part of the conversation. We can't solve it at a county level without bringing those partners to the table. I don't know, I've kind of joined this work now, and I think there were some conversations that were happening in 2022 that maybe didn't bring those partners to the table. My intention is to bring those folks back to the table into the conversation.
DC and Prince George's as well, for sure. Dr. Bridgers.
So I just wanted to add thank you to the council and to the county executive, I am now a member of the COGS Human Services Committee, so I look forward to working with Council Vice President Stewart. But looking at that, we've already begun to monitor the legislation that's been proposed in D.C., watching it closely, just to see if there are any impacts. We know that there are migratory patterns for even crime, and they come into Montgomery County. We need to be cognizant of that. Councilmember Alvarez, as you stated, Prince George's, the District of Columbia, and other areas, surrounding areas, without going into any detailed naming conventions, but we're looking at what folks are doing. It has been our practice to look at developing those preventative measures that turn out and are evaluated to be best practices. And that's what support we need from the council. We need to be able to look at those policies that may have partial impact, but impact in the county nevertheless. So we've begun to do that now as we have this conversation. So that's in progress.
And just one last thing to add. So just today I learned that I'm going to be helping to chair the work group on violence prevention for the state of Maryland's Building a Healthier Maryland State Health Improvement Plan. And so that coordinates quite well with this work, but also gives me the ability to see what's happening at the state level and how we tie into the broader picture of what's going on.
I know you had a lot of free time on your hands, Dr. Davis, so that's really good that you picked that up. That's right. That's good to hear, because that will help bridge that gap and connect those dots. Just last 2 points. So I guess the MCPS is going to be a really important partner here, and they're not at the table. And there's lots of challenges right now, lots of transition. But what I have found to be the most successful over years, and I'm preaching to the choir, is when there is one or maybe 2 points of contact who are decision makers, high level, who are empowered at the kinds of meetings that this contractor will convene to be able to make decisions on the ground and move things quickly. It's critical to the success of this. And the same is true of the other partner agencies. This was done at the director level previously, not just sort of a detailed person, but at the director level. It was that important. It was that high of a priority. And that, I think, is going to be critical to the success of this work. And the last thing I'll say is we have to listen to the people that are on the ground. You have to have folks who are in the weeds, rolling up their sleeves, the people who these kids call at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday when they're in crisis. Those are the folks whose voices we need to hear from the most, because they will be able to help inform what strategy we're going to use moving forward. But thank you all so much.
Thank you. Council President Friedson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ditto everything that Chair Albornoz said, and obviously his background on this is really important. The gang prevention work, that was one of the great successes of collaborative efforts, regional approaches, bringing people together, something that we really haven't seen and in a long time. And I share some concerns. I would just say I share some concerns here. Now, one, we absolutely should do this and need to be focused on these issues. And insofar as this is a drop in the bucket and a down payment on this, I think that's a step forward. I'm a little concerned that we have a lot of different approaches to deal with the crisis facing our youth. This is one piece of it. And how those different efforts all work together is not clear to me. I don't think that there's a strategic direction from the executive and from the executive branch on exactly how this is all going to work. So helping to put that constellation together and give a clear understanding to everybody involved of who's in charge, who's involved, how decisions get made, I think is going to be critical. I think we have proven that in Montgomery County we have great resources, we have great talent, we have very passionate, purpose-driven people, and to a certain extent we have some of the best programs that exist anywhere. I think the challenge that we have is we don't always connect the synapses. We don't always coordinate. We don't always have the systems that all function together. And I think if this individual can do that, God bless them, and let's clone them. But I think that's going to be challenging. And I think to the point that you were hearing from Chair Albornoz, which maybe I'm being a little bit more directly skeptical. It was previously done and successful because it was at the director level. There may have been people who were coordinating and carrying out the work, and obviously the voices and the perspectives of those who are actually on the ground, to his point, were the ones informing the decisions. But ultimately, the decision makers were in the room at the table. And the concern that I have is whether we're convening groups to talk about things versus actually doing things and responding in real time and able to make decisions. And so, insofar as you can help clarify that, not necessarily today, but as we move forward, about how all of these different efforts work together, or whether or not there should be one overarching effort, I think that's going to be really important, because these issues facing our youth are not unrelated, and these different efforts that are taking place, I think they're all important. But if they're not a puzzle piece that all fits neatly together in one strategic direction, it is going to be something that I think is going to be challenging to assess whether or not it's working, to make real-time adjustments and changes, to get the decisions from the decision makers that are necessary to actually move the needle.
Let me be clear. I am tasked with being the one to pull the folks to the table, and the consultant is not the one who will be doing that. They are really working side by side and assisting me and pulling the folks, along with the director, to pull the folks to the table at a senior level. And as we develop that strategic plan, I've been in conversation with folks at the school system, with Collaboration Council, with rec department, really across the board, to start to build that collaboration, rebuild the collaboration that was there previously at a high level, at the director level, to really get this moving forward. And I need support in order to be able to do that, and the consultant is really to be able to provide that extra, those extra hands.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's reassuring. Let's full steam ahead. The regional approach, I think, is really important. I'm glad you're taking on this role at the state. Prince George's and D.C. in particular are critical regional partners. That's true in every aspect of youth development. That's true in public safety. It's true in everything across the board. These issues don't have borders. Nobody cares what side of Eastern Avenue or Western Avenue or a river, or no one cares. And so we need to have that regional approach where there are warm handoffs, where there's pick up the phone and the exact person you're supposed to call. There's a built-in relationship. I don't think that exists today in the extent that it used to, and it needs to if we're going to actually be able to move the needle. So I appreciate that you're on top of it, and hope that this person is the unicorn that you are setting them up to be, that can help you to address these challenges, because obviously it's not just youth violence, but just the crisis facing our youth across the board is at a level that we can't sustain, and they certainly need our help. So with that, I'll yield back.
Just to add, Council President Friesen, so Councilmember Albornoz, this is a direct invitation to you from me and Dr. Davis to be part of the planning group.
Thank you. Wait, you may have a longer list than that. Because that was one of my things. But I'm going to turn to Council
That's
Member.
just for starters.
Yeah, I'm going to turn to Council Member Sales first, and then.
Awesome, thank you. And I don't know if the council saw the memo that I sent around, but I'm really glad that the county executive put this forth. I saw that, Dr. Davis is going to be leading this in the memo that was sent over, so I'm glad that the county executive is going to give you the support. But, after, I share my remarks with Councilmember Albornoz, because I do think this needs more attention and more resources. Just giving you the resources for the assistant, I actually sent a letter over a memo to the county executive asking for an additional $500,000 for this effort. You know, as I mentioned in the memo, all over the county, all over the country, we should be very concerned with the rise in juvenile arrests in our county. And, you know, Chief Jones mentioned that there's a 300% increase in juvenile violent crime arrests just from fiscal year 22 to 23, just in a year. So we've seen just an incredible amount of violence from our young people, and it just keeps on being amplified on social media. Every time I open my phone, I see another incident all over the county. And so with the number of young violent crime victims also grew more than 200%, with 215 in FY22 and 679 in FY23. Last year, when we were discussing funding for the Youth Harm Reduction Initiative, the council approved $672,000 in funds to reduce juvenile crime. And while this was a significant investment in the resources to address youth harm reduction, the issues are more complex, and so we know that there are root causes to this issue. And I'm glad that COG was mentioned, because the District of Columbia mentioned is doing an event, is doing a new program. Their Attorney General just launched a program, Leaders of Tomorrow. This program aims to utilize grants to reduce youth violence, focusing on 6 categories: academic achievement, workforce readiness, youth and family support, trauma-informed services, conflict and dispute resolution, meaningful engagement, and mental health and well-being. And so while many of these categories include programs that we already have in existence across several departments, from MCPS to already in HHS, I think this is a really good opportunity for us to have a multi-pronged approach to this effort. And I think with the additional resources that I've requested the executive to put forth in his FY25 budget, I'm hoping that we can count on his support and the support of my colleagues to ensure that we are tackling this issue from all directions. And so just want to thank you for your leadership in this effort, and just want to make sure that the county executive shared this memo with you. If he hasn't, I'll make sure that my staff gets that over to you and to the chair of GO as well.
We haven't seen it yet, but look forward to extra funding. I think that would go a long way. One of the things that you mentioned in these programs is that we do have a lot of these programs in the county.
Yeah.
They are scattered and disparate,
Yes.
and we don't really know who they're helping and when. And a big push of this initiative is to be better able to tell where are the pockets of folks that need help, and where are the programs, and how do we better match those together. There's a lot that we can do with data and infrastructure, improving websites, using AI, and really getting to the next level of technology to help address this issue. Every time I talk to a director or a different person in the community, I learn a plethora of new programs that didn't exist and wouldn't have known how to access. And so how we create those resources and make those more available for the folks who need them when they need them, which may be 1 o'clock in the morning. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I've had the pleasure to work with Kelly Umana, and I will say she is a unicorn. I do think that is important because I do think in the packet that we were provided, more information rather than the paragraph would have been helpful, just for the future on that, because I personally know and have worked and seen her work and agree, Dr. Davis, with your assessment and Dr. Bridges, and I'm glad she's the partner on this moving forward. And I just a couple of things. I was going to say, again, partnership, I agree, and very much so partnerships with our offices. Unfortunately, and not necessarily HHS, but other departments in our county government sometimes forget to work with the county council, particularly the district members. And it's frustrating for us because we can amplify things. We know the folks on the ground, and I think it's for this type of project. I think it would be very important to make sure there was close collaboration, particularly with the district offices. Though the at-larges are awesome as well. And the other thing, regional coordination, absolutely. Prince George's, Washington D.C. Unfortunately, don't forget about Virginia.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is not to set up any jurisdiction over any other, but unfortunately, many of the young people who have committed crimes recently, particularly in my neck of the woods, got traced back to Virginia. And so this isn't just looking at the policies, but it's also looking at coordination, how, I know it's been a long struggle to try and get MOUs with the police departments and other things, but what other things can be put in place to do that? And I know our police departments and others do coordinate very well on certain things, but I would just add Virginia to that mix as well. MCPS, absolutely, but another partner is Montgomery College. Is really key in all of these conversations as well when we're talking about young people in our community and how to get them connected to different programs. I mean, last night at our public hearing, we heard particularly about how the arts at Montgomery College at their Rockville campus really made a huge difference in young people's lives. And so I just don't want to leave them off the table. But it's getting late for us, and I think we have support, but I will call the vote on this. But I just want to thank you for the work on this, and we look forward for more information. So all those in favor on the committees for moving this forward to the full council, I see that is unanimous of both committees. All right. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing more about this. Ms. Yao, thank you for the terrific work on the packets today. Appreciate that. And with that, we are adjourned.